Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Reflux Revolution podcast. If you're new here, my name is Molly Pelletier, registered dietitian, reflux and GERD nutrition specialist, founder of Flora Nutrition, and a former GERD sufferer myself. I started this podcast because I have been where you are, frustrated, overwhelmed, and unsure if relief was even possible for me. On this podcast, we cut through the noise to provide practical, evidence-based strategies to help you understand and better manage your reflux with confidence. Quick disclaimer, this information shared here is educational only. It's not meant to diagnose, treat, or cure any condition. Always consult your healthcare team before making changes to your diet or treatment plan. So, I want to start this episode by talking about one of my clients. Let's call him Mark. He had a hiatal hernia and had been struggling with reflux for years. His hiatal hernia was about 3 centimeters. He was really tired of living in fear of his meals, of feeling like no matter what he did, he was having reflux, and he felt like his hernia was a lifetime sentence of acid reflux. And I know that this is really the place so many of our clients are coming to us in. We have a ton of clients with hiatal hernias, and it can be really discouraging and frustrating because there's just not much education about what they even are and how you can support yourself. And a lot of people are left feeling like, am I just gonna have reflux forever? And is there anything I can do to help myself? And the answer is no. Hiatal hernias are not a lifetime sentence of reflux, and there's so much you can do to support yourself. So what I want to tell you about Mark's journey is that he didn't really know that there were lifestyle and dietary strategies that really could significantly improve his quality of life, reduce his reflux events, which then allowed his tissues to really reduce inflammation and soothe and heal, so that even if he did have occasional reflux, it wasn't like a huge deal. It wasn't going to last this pain. It wasn't going to last like weeks and months. It was a totally different scenario. His occasional reflux was relatively normal because there is a normal level of occasional reflux. But there were some really specific things that we did to reduce his reflux events, optimize his lower esophageal junction, his lower esophageal sphincter, and also help soothe inflammation. So today we're going to dive into what a hiatal hernia is, why it can worsen reflux, and practical ways that you can manage it on a day-to-day basis. So what is a hiatal hernia? A hiatal hernia is just a portion of your stomach that like pushes up through the diaphragm in your chest cavity. And this diaphragm is actually a really important part of your lower esophageal junction. We always think about the lower esophageal sphincter in terms of your anti-reflux barrier, but your diaphragm is also super important in terms of creating an anti-reflux barrier. So there's a couple different types of hernias. There's a sliding hernia that are actually the most common. It's a part of the stomach that kind of moves in and out of that lower esophageal junction. And then there's a paraesophageal hernias, which are less common and can be a little bit more serious. It's like part of the stomach that sits next to the esophagus. So, and they're not necessarily moving, coming in and out. Why does this matter? The hernia can weaken the lower esophageal sphincter, which is a valve that, again, helps to create that anti-reflux barrier. It helps to keep stomach contents out of the esophagus. So this can increase the likelihood of regurgitation, of backflow of stomach contents. People with hiatal hernias might feel more pressure in the chest. They might experience more regurgitation, especially when overeating. And we're going to kind of come back to that gastric pressure scenario, because gastric pressure is something we really want to be thinking about if you have a hiatal hernia. You might experience belching, bloating, feeling full quickly, chest discomfort, or pressure after meals. Those are some symptoms that you might feel with reflux related to a hernia. But not everyone with hiatal hernia experiences reflux. I really want to make this clear, is that a lot of people, especially with 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter hiatal hernias, they might never have an issue with reflux diseases, in meaning that they don't notice reflux as a major part of their daily experience. But if you do, which is why you're here, lifestyle and dietary strategies make a massive difference. So the first thing I want to talk about is that gastric pressure scenario. So when you have a hiatal hernia, you kind of already have excess pressure on the lower esophageal junction, which causes that relaxation. Now, anytime we increase a lot of pressure on the stomach, this can also weaken temporarily the lower esophageal sphincter. So abdominal adiposity, really large meals, carbonated beverages, these things can increase gastric pressure. So this can also really impact people with hiatal hernias. So that is why those might be really big triggers for someone with a hernia, that being overeating, like eating really large meals, feeling like Thanksgiving dinner full, obesity, having a lot of excess abdominal tissue. But there is nothing really, there's no relationship between having a hiatal hernia and being obese, so there's not a connection there. If you're thinking like, oh, do I have this hernia because I'm overweight? No, there's not a connection, but being overweight, having a lot of abdominal adiposity can put more pressure on that sphincter. And then carbonated beverages, again, that can increase gastric pressure. So we're really thinking about, in terms of number one strategy here, is smaller frequent meals. So Mark, what we did was kind of break up his meals a little bit. He was eating like a massive dinner, really close to bed. He was not really eating a regular lunch. He was having like a cheese stick and maybe like some crackers for lunch and really nothing for breakfast. So we worked on having a nice whole food breakfast with oatmeal and pumpkin seeds and a little bit of banana. And then we had for lunch like a turkey sandwich with some baby carrots and some tortilla chips or something like that, I think. And then we also had like an afternoon snack so that when he did get to dinner, he wasn't starving. He was able to really slow down, chew his food well, and watch for his fullness cues. For Mark, overeating was his biggest trigger. So we really worked on that meal time pattern and meal size. And then just really understanding like when he was feeling full, watching for signs of fullness in his body, noticing, okay, I'm starting to feel satisfied. I feel like a little bit of fullness in my stomach, knowing like, okay, that's a good time to wrap things up. We also really wanted to avoid eating too close to his bedtime because you have that hiatal hernia. The sphincter may not close as strongly as other people's. So other people might be okay with eating right before bed, but those with a hiatal hernia, we really want to space out dinner about 3 hours before bed so that you have time for your stomach to empty and your sphincter doesn't have to work as hard to keep things in your stomach. So that was really important. Number two was this like initial healing phase that Mark and I went through. So because Mark had been living in this dietary pattern that kind of encouraged reflux at night, he had a lot of inflammation in his esophagus. He had esophagitis. So it was not only the hiatal hernia that was, a potential contributor, but it was his pattern of eating. So we really had to kind of shift that so that we could reduce his nocturnal reflux. We removed for a period of time high acidity foods. We removed things like tomato sauce, sodas, coffee, these really high acid foods that were triggering him because we needed his tissue to like calm down and heal. When we are able to heal that tissue, this really helps with your overall reflux symptoms because, like I said, if you have an occasional reflux event or an occasional coffee or something like that, your tissue is now not like already sunburned and already irritated, if you know what I mean. This helped to reduce inflammation. We also used herbs like slippery elm and DGL. These herbs are now in my supplement Sequoia Soothe, which is now live. This is the first podcast episode that I'm recording. That Sequoia Soothe is now live. Sequoia Soothe is a 4-in-1 reflux supplement that includes slippery elm, DGL, L-glutamine, and zinc carnosine. So these ingredients that I use with Mark separately were able to help him reduce inflammation and heal irritated tissue. I'll put the link for that down below. So anyway, we allowed this inflammation to calm down for Mark. We also really worked on body positioning during eating. So Mark was often like eating his meals over his desk, really slouching during his meals, or even like slouching on the couch right after his meals. When you have a hernia, had to get my stomach pillow for this if you're watching this on YouTube. When you have a hernia, and you slouch at your meals, you're like crumpling your digestive system. This is not a position that the lower esophageal sphincter likes to be in. Your lower esophageal sphincter can't close well if you're slouched. So we want to sit up nice and tall. Not only is this good for your posture, but this is so awesome from a reflux perspective because this allows you to chew your food well, break it down, swallow, goes through the esophagus, lands in the fundus, the top of the stomach that accepts the food, contracts, and then moves it down, contracts and move it down, versus it's getting stuck somewhere along the way, or it's arriving in the fundus and getting stuck because your stomach is compressed. So posture, it sounds so simple and it's free, but it helped Mark so much, okay? This is also true for super tight clothing. That's not something that I would really recommend super, super tight, restrictive, like you take it off and there's a ton of body marks from your clothing. I would kind of watch out for that. We also worked on strengthening his diaphragm with diaphragmatic breathing. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about diaphragmatic breathing, but I will never stop, you guys. I will never stop talking about diaphragmatic breathing because it is free. It is research-based. There are randomized controlled trials on this, okay? This is one of the best ways to support your LES and your diaphragm is just diaphragmatic breathing. We talk a whole lot about this on the Flora app. I have a video on my YouTube channel about how to diaphragmatic breathe. This is going to help strengthen your diaphragm, which has carryover effects for your LES. We need to think about strengthening your diaphragm and your LES if you have a hiatal hernia. So Mark and I were really working on diaphragmatic breathing throughout the day, like 15 to 20 times a day. He had like a Post-it note everywhere to remind him to diaphragmatic breathe after his meals, when he's working out, kind of throughout the day, and this was massively helpful. Sorry if you can hear this rain coming down. It's pouring outside. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about in terms of Mark was the way he was eating. So the way he was eating, really eating rapidly, not paying attention to fullness cues. This is what I call mealtime mindfulness or mealtime hygiene. We really dialed in his mealtime mindfulness, chewing well, slowing down, taking his time with meals, and this radically transformed his digestion. So what I want you to take away from this podcast is that living with a hiatal hernia doesn't mean you are resigning yourself to a life of reflux. Small intentional changes to your meals, your timing, your posture, and your lifestyle can help you reduce inflammation. Alongside strategic supplements like Sequoia Soothe or using an alginate before bed, all of these things can help to reduce your reflux events, which will allow your tissue to heal, and that is the key. It is allowing these tissues to reduce sensitivity so that we can invite our favorite foods back in moderation. And this can drastically reduce symptoms. In summary, for Mark, adjusting his meal timing, adding reflux-friendly foods, going through a healing phase, reducing the high acid foods, making a few changes to his posture and his day-to-day eating routine not only helped him optimize his total body health because he was just eating better, but it also helped him to have more energy throughout the day and reduce nocturnal reflux, which is what his major problem was. We also supported his body with strategic supplementation, like I said, slippery elm, DGL, using alginates before bed, and this significantly reduced his heartburn and his reflux symptoms. Also helped him regain confidence with food because he was able to invite some of these triggers back in moderation in his diet and get back to his morning cup of coffee. I get this question a lot about hiatal hernias in surgery, and when it is a small size hiatal hernia, somewhere between 1 and 3 centimeters, or even a medium-sized hiatal hernia, 4 or 5 centimeters, surgery is typically not indicated from what I have observed in my practice. I have worked with hundreds of people with hiatal hernias, so I have a really large data set of working with people with hernias. I have never seen surgery recommended to someone with a hiatal hernia. If you have a hiatal hernia over 6, 7, 8 centimeters, potentially that would be in your treatment plan, but you really want to make sure you're getting a bunch of opinions, get a couple of different surgical opinions before you make your decision. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on hiatal hernia and reflux. If you want more guidance on reflux, meal strategies, symptoms, tracking, or personalized support, definitely head over to Flora Nutrition. It's www.flora-nutrition.com, where I share resources, our programs, the Flora app, our supplement, and one-to-one sessions for those with digestive health issues like reflux, GERD, LPR. If this episode helped you, subscribe, leave a review, share it with a friend who is struggling with reflux. Remember, you can take control of your reflux and your body is on your team. Talk to you in the next episode.